tallow has a temperature that allows you to fry things in it without it completely degrading the product and becoming something unhealthy. Potatoes are a food that come from the earth. When sliced and fried in tallow and salted, they taste amazing.
Bills, welcome to Meat Mafia podcast.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I feel like this has been a long time coming. We're excited for this episode for a few reasons. Number one, obviously you're an amazing, close personal friend of ours too. I think you blend this amazing ability to create films, be a founder, and also you're extremely passionate about the health and wellness space. I think you have a super unique talent stack. And secondly, the work that you've put in with Dose Chips is incredible. The first time we tried a bag, I'm not just saying this, it was by far the best potato chip that we've both ever had, to the point where I wanted to invest immediately after I tried one of the potato chips.
And you did.
And you're proving that you can make foods that are delicious but don't compromise at all from an ingredient perspective, which I think is amazing. There's like this new health and wellness economy where consumers for years have wanted a potato chip, which really should just be good quality potatoes, salt, regenerative beef tallow, and combine those things and make it taste delicious. And you've actually done the hard work to actually create that product. So I think to start, man, I think we would just love to learn a little bit more about, when did this vision of Dose come into your mind? Why did you feel like you were right to be able to create something like this? That would be a great starting point.
Yeah, right on. Thank you for having me. You guys are both exceptional friends, and your pod is amazing. So what an honor. Dose is the name of a dog that I had that passed away suddenly, too early. So it was, the name became a way to honor her, but also to keep me disciplined and working on the thing. I think my attention span is really good for 2 years, which is about the time it takes to make a feature film, or sometimes longer. And then I typically try to find somebody to take it from me there, and I use that name, that association, for it to be something that I never was willing to give up on. And then from a product perspective, I think that, as you guys know, I have a company that builds brands, an agency, from a media perspective and a brand identity perspective. So there's a lot of opportunity to create exercises of just creating things that maybe somebody would, maybe a large sum of people would be interested in. And as you said, there is a wave of beef tallow and somewhat of a renaissance towards healthier foods, or healthier alternatives to foods, the healthier space, which is not something new. Of course, food didn't always used to be bad. And as somebody who cooked with tallow and who had fried chicken in tallow and who had fried potatoes in tallow, because you can make your own potato chips at home, I think I was at a position where I could just kind of pick which one I was going to attempt next, perhaps as a distraction from my other businesses, or just an opportunity to like reignite my desire to create something and start something and found something. It had been years, maybe 10 plus years, since I had a potato chip. Maybe grazing a party, had one or two by accident because I had gotten to an insatiable place and just started eating things off of a table, as we can do. But there was a time in my life, and in y'all's life as well, where you came home and potato chips or something like it were the first thing that you grabbed from your pantry at your house, and there was a nostalgia there. And Giorgio Armani says, you can have a new fabric with a familiar design, or you can have a new design with a familiar fabric. And so I saw potato chips as an opportunity to create something familiar but new by, instead of frying them in deoxidized seed oils, to fry them in tallow. So there's a blend of wanting to be successful in something, in a new category for me, and a desire to exercise my ability to brand things and create content around them, and like also to connect with community. And I think the third thing is a selfish desire to eat potato chips.
What challenges has Dose presented? Because you've started other brands before, but Dose is really your first brand that is a snack, and like it's in a totally different category. So what challenges have been presented from you starting an actual potato chip company?
That's clever considering you know them all. But we'll tell the audience.
Teed that one up for
you. An unbelievable amount of challenges. I think it's interesting that you're like, oh, you see somebody like Masa, which is a great product, a great company, and you're like, why are there not more of those? In your head, and you're like, I'm gonna go do that because that company, Masa or whoever else, or Rosie's, they deserve a competitor that can go up them with them at this scale, and they can be the two head honchos of the space, the jefes. And then you realize very soon that's why, because one, no one will work with tallow because all their fryers have seed oils in them and they can keep them in there for forever. It's very difficult to get manufacturers to come down to the MOQs, minimum order quantities, that a new company that's not trying to capitalize itself needs the amount of small orders it needs to scale into where it's eventually going. And then we ran into so many issues from a brand perspective of bag printers, bag makers not honoring our product, our color codes, our desire for quality, that it would be very easy and perhaps reduce the amount of stress one goes through on a daily basis to say, okay, this is just too difficult, too challenging. For Dose in particular, for Dose, I have other brands that are at scale. So I leveraged my relationships there to find opportunities for people to be a co-man, which is, I have no business making potato chips. My business is creating a brand, creating content, and putting it out to market. I found out very early that no one was going to fry my chips. So in June of 2023, I was making the chips to sell at the farmer's market just to understand what the market was like, what the appetite was like. And then two, chips go in chip bags, and there's a throng of chips not in chips bags, and then these other things, which I understand, because these companies are like, oh, we don't want to pay the price to get the 100,000 chip bags when we don't know if we're going to sell 100,000 bags. So when we first sought out a chip bag person, we have no experience in chip bags, none experience. So we go through this process of, hey, let's make a prototype, and this prototype comes. Okay, this prototype's good, but it's not going to fit 5.5 ounce bags of chips. Okay, so another prototype comes in 6 weeks. This prototype is good, but the color's wrong. Well, when we go to print, we'll get the color right. Okay, so let's approve this prototype, and then the roll of material comes that we spent $6,500 on, and it's arbitrarily reduced to the previous size of bags from the prototype that we did not approve. And then we work with the same person, although having a backup option to fix that, because we're promised that they won't charge us. And then that bag comes and it's the previous color. You've seen the bag. It's a gradient to represent what it looks like on Sam's farm in the spring. And the gradient on the bag comes in, and it's not as poppy, it's not as saturated, it's not as full as life like Sam's farm. And so then having to say, okay, we're no longer going to work with this chip bag printer, we're going to go to a new chip bag printer, coincidentally is in Austin, Texas. That process ends up being perfect and smooth, and then you go into filling the chips into the bags, and then the seal marks are wrong, so the chips don't seal properly. It looks like it looks like one side of your pants are up higher on your hip, so that's not going to work. We're not going to go to market with that. Fortunately, why we're having this podcast is we're very close to the place where chip bags are perfect and the chips are perfect. And then the other challenge being that because nobody will make our chips, we're not at a place where we're making the amount of chips per hour needed to reach scale, or for our cost of labor and materials to make like a lot of sense right now. I think it's imperative to eventually say create and release, and we're at the point now where we've created a whole bunch and gone through these challenges that you asked about, which you knew about, and that every entrepreneur goes through. These are just the ones unique to Dose, where we're going to get to this place in 2 weeks where it's okay to release something not necessarily imperfect, but not as perfect as we seek out, that we strive for.
I find that, Harry and I basically had almost every single tallow product seemingly on the market. And I know I mentioned this earlier, but the taste of Dose is the thing that immediately sticks out to us, where it's the perfect crisp, the salt factor is amazing. And then the big thing too is with some of these other tallow chips, I find that it seems like it's a very finicky product, where a lot of these products, other chips that I've had, they almost dry your mouth out. But I feel like you guys nailed all those different factors. I think you were you working with Miles Snyder on like the initial formulation? How did you guys nail that? Because he's a genius. He's been on the podcast twice. We have such admiration for him. So as soon as we saw that you guys were working together, we were like, oh, this product's going to be amazing.
Miles and I fried chicken together, and we fried chips for the first time together in March 2023. It's June 2024 now, almost June 2024 now. Miles has a very defined palate, and he strives for perfection, just like everybody else that was involved in the business does, including Sam. So when things came out less than what we sought to create from, a potato chip that, wow,
Dang,
never heard that before.
never heard that.
Including Sam. So when we first started frying chips and they came out less than what we sought to create, and striving for perfection, he was able to break those things down on a piece of paper to say it needed to change the frying time, frying temperature, needed to change the salt ratio, maybe even needed to change the size of the slice of the potato chip. Very fortunate to not attempt things, to not try to be the individual responsible for the things that I'm hiring or collaborating with or partnering with the person who I'm collaborating with that thing for. So in that instance of my relationship with Miles, is I'm collaborating with him because he's a phenomenal chef with a very definable palate and strives for perfection as well. So when we say this chip isn't right, it's too tallowy or it's not crispy enough, Miles is able to, reverse engineer something as close to that first bite, taking you back to 5th grade after school, that feeling. I would think that feeling is that we weren't aware as we are now of like seed oils. I mean, certainly seed oils were always bad, but like as children, we weren't like, this seed oil is going to kill me. Yeah. We were like, it just tastes really good. So I think removing the fear of death from a snack, and which is very dramatic, removing that fear, and also like connecting with taste buds that have been around for us from a very long time. And like we associate salty foods with certain memories or certain times or certain activities. I think if the chip weren't perfect in that way, it wouldn't do what we want it to do, which is to connect with people's fond memories of consuming salty foods.
Do you feel like when you have
y'all are doing great, by the way,
minus the truck horn outside?
No, I mean, y'all are just asking great questions.
Well, one of the things I was curious about, so like when you get a bag of Lay's potato chips, what do you think is lacking in that chip compared to what your chip offers from a flavor standpoint?
I think it's Lay's. Getting a bag of Lay's chips is consistent, which is something I'm missing. It's always a Lay's potato chip, which is why it's it has to be the most largely circulated potato chip in the world.
Right.
I think Tallow offers something that Lay's doesn't, because it's not using tallow, and it offers that like satiating, meaty. You guys like meat.
We like meat.
You love beef. Offers that. It's really just that satiatingness, like if you eat 2 pounds of ground beef, you don't need to eat anything else in your day. If you eat these chips fried in seed oil, like you're going to consume the whole bag because you have to. You've started consuming salt, you want more and more and more. It's connecting with something in the brain. It's like, give me more and more of that. I think you can eat a handful of Dose Texas salt and be like, well, okay, I don't know that I need like to consume this whole 5.5 ounce bag, which I think is extremely advantageous from a snack perspective because you can put a Dose bag clip on it, put it back in the pantry, and return to it, or share it with people. Sharing it with people would be nice since it's a food meant to be, shared and ate in community.
Yeah.
I think it's a little silly to like. I don't know if I told you about some of the campaigns, but like one of the campaigns is Sam's children on their iPads and eating chips. And Sam is like, man, I really need. Sam is a farmer in Brenham, Texas, an exceptional farmer. Shirt Tail Creek Farms, best eggs in the state of Texas.
Incredible.
I think we can all agree that. Where Sam is, he comes in on his children. He's got 2 children, a girl and a boy, and they're on their iPads and they're eating potato chips. And Sam's like, I really need to change something here. My kids can't. It's summer. My kids can't be on their iPads eating potato chips. So we removed the potato chips and put in Dose, and they're still on their iPads. And like that's the campaign is small steps, and like we want to make something fun, and I don't know what led me there, but I hope it connects with the audience.
I think it will, and I think that's what gets us excited. I think Harry and I just have this belief, if you can solve these big blocks with children in regards to nutrition and teaching them how to eat the right way, I think a lot of these macro level issues in society could potentially be solved. And I think there's someone that might be listening to this that could be like, well, I just eat steak and raw milk. I don't really need a potato chip.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, number one, the product's not necessarily for you. It could be for your kids. And secondly, I don't want to be this overly methodical person where I can't enjoy my life as well. Like when you're at a ball game or you're at a picnic or with your friends, I would love to have some potato chips. And if I'm eating steak and Dose chips, literally potato, beef tallow, salt, that's a health food.
Yeah.
It's not a junk food at all. And it tastes incredible.
Yeah, I agree with you in that I don't think potato chips is something I would see. It's not something I've sought out for years, like we discussed at the beginning. And the community aspect of it, not everyone is us, and where they only, eat beef and drink milk, like we're going to, no matter what, the world is so different that we're going to be surrounded by people that are different from us occasionally, especially as we start to have children and like our children are growing up with somebody who's from a different world than us and they don't eat, 2 pounds of ground beef a day and drink, raw goat milk. They have potato chips. So it's nice to be able to be offered something that isn't horrible for you and also offer something for friends, new friends, whoever else, a bag of potato chips that's those 3 ingredients. And I think that motivator is a big driver of solving the challenges and getting to the point where we can be on your podcast talking about it and releasing it in 2 weeks,
Definitely.
You mentioned Sam. Was it important for you to source locally for the tallow?
Yeah, I think I eat local, and I know you guys too. Like we see each other at the markets. Like I don't buy anything unless it's from somebody I look in the in the eyes and say, where's your farm? That's a incredible part of being a human, that like you can know the people that make your food, because years ago you didn't eat anything unless you made it or unless you hunted it and gathered it. And getting away from that is certainly a conundrum for the people, and certainly cause of some of our larger systemic societal issues. And it's not my place to get into them, and I won't. I just want to solve things for myself and for my friends. And like Sam's tallow is also really great. It's great tallow. I've used it to grease my cast iron for 3 years. And it was a super big challenge for him, being like, I know you sell these small 2-ounce jars of tallow. We need you to go like where we're 150 pounds of tallow just for us at a time. And I think we won't, that relationship will change, because as we sell thousands, 30,000 chip bags a month, we'll probably need multiple sources of tallow, because there's a cycle on tallow. It's not just, something that you create from mixing a bunch of engine oils. Like it is something that comes from a living thing, a living organism, and that living organism has a lifespan. And we're not grass-fed, grass-finished cows are happy cows. So they're not ones put to slaughter, eventually they're put down to become a food source, but they eat grass and they have a happy life of sun. And Sam has only so many cows.
Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely make sure to link your contact info in the show notes, because there are a bunch of regenerative farmers that listen to the pod. So if anyone has great tallow that's regenerative that can do it at scale, I'm sure you'd be very interested to talk to them.
And you guys have introduced me to some great ones who have been on the pod and who have great businesses. San Diego guys, Kevin. We talked to somebody in Pennsylvania. You and I, we've talked to people in Illinois. There is no one source of tallow because of what we just talked about. It comes from a living organism. So we never want to get to a point where we sacrifice quality because of scale and demand.
Yes. Yeah, what you described earlier about the relationship from consumer to rancher, the eye contact, the handshake, that's essentially a sacred transaction that we've really lost. And if you want to reclaim your autonomy, just getting super close to the food supply like you've done is and cook those meals from those ranchers that you trust. That is a very easy way to get yourself into incredible health. And I feel like brands like Dose and hopefully what we're doing at Noble are almost an extension of that too, where you're being very transparent, extremely authentic. You're kind of opening up the hood for the customer so they really feel like they know you as the founder and they can trust that you're putting like your blood, sweat, and tears and not compromising on any single part of the ingredient. I love that aspect of what you're doing. And the other thing that I love that you're doing is you said in the early stages when you were first making these chips, you were just putting them in brown bags and going to the farmer's market to meet customers, because sampling has been a huge part of what Harry and I have done at Noble. And there are a lot of these new modern founders that are like, why are you going to sample? You could just sell your product online and run paid ads and make thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But the biggest learnings that we've gotten are shaking hands with customers and them being open and transparent with their questions. So I'm just curious, what were some of the things that you kind of learned early on during that sampling process last summer?
Not to have a tallowy tasting potato chip, like one that has tallow residue on the mouth, which is solved by some of the things that Miles came up with, some of the things that we do in production. And before I answer that question in its entirety, I think what you're talking about is that people don't necessarily want to buy more products. They want to be part of stories like you're talking about, opening the hood. Or people don't want, they just want solutions to their problems or distractions from their problems if they're not going to find solutions. So the story could be a distraction from their problem that eventually leads to them, finding more within themselves or being inspired to make a change. And then your product offers something that could make a change. So as the three of us as founders, I think it's imperative that we distill that down to your audience, is that people don't buy more people don't want to buy more products. They want to buy stories, which are solutions to their problems or distractions for their problems, and hopefully those distractions lead to aspiration and inspiration. From a dose perspective, like I said, don't have it. Like from a dose perspective, don't have a tallowy residue potato chip. Like, it should be clean. It should be crisp. It should be satiating and salty. And then I don't know what percentage, your audience isn't fair because you're called the meat mafia. But I don't know what percentage of middle America or the fringes of our country know what tallow is. I mean, maybe the fringes, definitely the fringes, because they're farmers. But those that have in the suburbs who have a 9 to 5, who wake up, have a coffee, go to work, take their children to school, come home, go to the grocery store, feed microwave meals or pre-prepped whatever, like what percentage of them, very little, know what tallow is. So just as Noble offers an opportunity to explain what nose to tail is, and it's a challenge, like how do I get somebody to buy something in a 20-second digital ad or a 20-minute video long form, which offers more value. We are learning daily how many people don't know what tallow is. So how do you create something education driven, that's entertaining, that offers value to the audience member that may become a consumer of your product? We've heard the adage thousands of times. McDonald's used to fry their potatoes in tallow to make the world's greatest French fry. So you can start there with like, hey, you know, the place that we all eat or all have eaten at in this world, the thing that we all share is that we all had McDonald's. Like they used to fry in tallow, which is a good starting point. But I don't know that that's where we want to start. Where we want to start is that tallow has a temperature that allows you to fry things in it without it completely degrading the product and becoming something unhealthy. Potatoes are a food that come from the earth. When sliced and fried in tallow and salted, they taste amazing.
Mm. It's so exciting for us just seeing all these tallow products, including Dose, just come to the market. Because I remember not too long ago, like 2 years ago, we were writing about tallow and how McDonald's used to use tallow in their French fries or in their fryers to make their French fries, and how they used to taste better. And actually, you know, they used to be like somewhat healthy.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. I think like there's just a handful of brands that are just getting started who are kind of pioneering in the space. Just seeing them come to market and people being curious enough to either try the product or try to go a layer further and understand what the actual benefits are of tallow. Do you remember the first time you had tallow?
It had to be some time ago. I'm a Texan, and both my parents, my father's a Texan. My mother came here when she was very young, so it had to have been some time ago. My food journey. It's so funny to call it a food journey. But my food journey has always been on the side of like seeking out what's local. You know, I lived in different parts of the world and still ate locally. So I can remember the first time I bought tallow in Texas, which was from Sam at his market, where he had just come out with these little jars. And this is back when Sam used to run his own, you know, stand at downtown farmers market. And he'd be like, Mills, we had a relationship. I bought eggs there. I bought ground beef there. I bought marrow bones there. I have packaged my tallow. Would you like to try it? And he gave me sampled one, complimentary. And I took it home and probably changed the mundane things I was eating by using tallow. It wasn't enough tallow to fry chicken, but I was like, I could fry some chicken in this, you know, like we love fried chicken, really. Yeah. So I hope we can make that connection with an audience and give them that feeling of like, oh, this is my first time to try tallow. It's amazing. I want to do so many things with tallow. And another piece of our campaign for launch is like at local pastures, we fry potatoes in tallow and we fry potatoes in, you know, the other thing. And we're like, hey, just passerby, like local pastures probably isn't fair because everybody's going to choose tallow, but a little unfair advantage is okay sometimes. And which one tastes better? And people are like, oh, the tallow chip. I'm like, here, have a bag of Dose, you know? And then maybe they go inside and buy more tallow and go home and make some fried chicken for some people. I think I keep at least mentioning fried chicken. Fried chicken and tallow is a great thing.
Yeah.
Daidue's fried chicken is unbelievable.
Yeah, except for they changed it Sunday to quail. So it's fried
It's
quail.
tiny. It's good, but it's so tiny. I had to order 2 of them. I went like 2 weeks ago. I had to order 2 quails because I'm like, this is tiny.
Yeah.
But it's delicious. But you bring up a good point where it's interesting how we just equate certain foods as being unhealthy. So fried chicken, ice cream, potato chips, the list goes on and on. But it's like the preparation either makes the poison or the antidote of the food.
Amazing.
And it's just such an interesting concept to think about. I had something I was going to say and it literally just slipped my mind right now.
That's okay. I think bringing up what you mentioned around like the prep of food, tallow specifically is not just something to make potatoes in, you know, like we're saying, there's plenty of use cases for it. I'm not the expert whatsoever on all the different use cases for tallow, but we know from Masa that it can make delicious corn chips that becomes a scalable, profitable business. We know from the tallow twins that it becomes beautiful skincare that can reduce eczema or acne. And then we will know from Dose very soon that it can make an exceptional potato chip. So I think that what you mentioned, both of you have mentioned, is like, oh, we've been on the scene for 2 years, and now we're starting to see things in tallow. Well, imagine all the other things that we're going to see in tallow from a restaurant perspective, product perspective, skincare perspective, gut microbiome perspective. A competitor to seed from a what's it called, the daily things for your gut.
Probiotic.
Like all the different things we're going to see because people were brave enough to go try to make it to the top of the mountain of the Tallow Mountain and maybe not make it all the way, but set the pace, walk so others could run, so that the world can become a place that consumes healthy amounts of tallow.
Yeah, you guys made a good point earlier about McDonald's too, because if you talk to a baby boomer that grew up on McDonald's, they might not know anything about the nutritional benefits of beef tallow versus seed oil, but they can recall, oh my gosh, McDonald's French fries in 1987 were so good.
Yeah.
But then they changed in 1990. What happened? They don't know anything about the nutrition, but they remember the taste. So it's like if you're solving for taste, I think you could kind of win over those people in middle America that don't know about the nutritional benefits too.
Totally. And boomers are the hardest, right? Like,
yes.
One of my favorite subreddits is like...
Is it boomers are the hardest?
No, it's like it's a bit degrading. So it's something about boomers, and but yeah, I mean that represents an opportunity to connect with them. In that McDonald's used to be something that a lot more people. I mean, a lot of people still consume it. I don't know the numbers, and I don't care, but a lot more people used to consume McDonald's regularly, and they do have an association with a better tasting French fry because. I don't know how long it's been I don't know how long it's been since you guys had McDonald's, but definitely since I was a child, I've not had McDonald's. So I don't remember how the French fries taste, but like the people that are the age of the boomers certainly do, and they have an association with that. So if you could capture that essence and deliver it in something new, like we talked about, familiar and new, then I think you have an opportunity, like you said, to connect with hopefully a bigger media, or a bigger market size than those currently interested in tallow or nose to tail supplements, protein powder.
One of the things I love about you and why I think Dose is going to be this perfect combination of your cinematic background, but also just your touch on like the refinement of getting the product right, is you have this reverence for a return to tradition, which I think shows up in the product, like the way you're trying to tell these stories and things like that. And I'm curious, like as a founder, that fingerprint is all over this brand, but like where does that come from? Where does that return to tradition come from?
I think from a lot of things happening that are unique to us as a generation, which is like we're seeing the rise of computers thinking for us and like being addicted to things in our pocket and like missing connections with people. I don't think, like we talked about, like healthy food is not a new thing, hundreds of years ago, not even hundreds of years ago, 60 years ago, food was healthy, even going to a diner, a greasy diner was better than a lot of the things that you can eat on Cesar Chavez. I have a hypothesis, and I think you know this hypothesis, and perhaps you were leading me a little bit, but I believe that everything is original or nothing is. So this return to tallow snacks or this return to nose to tail supplementation is not a new thing. It's just a remix of something that previously happened. And so our generation is distinctly given this opportunity to say, okay, you can go further into a place of where you lack consciousness, or you can return, or we can be the reason that people return to the arts as the highest form of creation, of expression, of sharing, of being something that we all connect on. So I firmly believe that although there is a overwhelming sense of shortness in our attention spans and what we seek out, and cinemas are Mad Max Furiosa is on pace to had one of the worst Memorial Day openings in 40 years, and like although there's perhaps evidence to support otherwise, I believe that we're at the precipice of a time where people go back to seeking out long-form storytelling, and the highest form of art being storytelling, and the class systems no longer being divided by wealth, but being divided by who has an acumen and an appetite for art. So if you are somebody who is of perhaps class system isn't great. It isn't great. But if you are a well-educated, a beautiful, connected person with your community, yourself, your family, then you are somebody who consumes art from the highest form. And you're somebody who seeks it out, who funds it, who who incubates young people to make art. And if you were somebody of a lesser prestige, then you consume AI created content. You continue to spend hours on Instagram and TikTok scrolling. You have a very limited understanding of what is happening in the world that is good, because you don't seek out that information. You are satiated by crap, you know. So that return to tradition is that I think I always thought in pictures. I always thought in little vignettes and in films, and I grew up on the films of the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. And that was an exceptional time for cinema and for art and for our country. And those stories are not fables to me. They are inspiration and things to aspire to, and they are my upbringing. And my upbringing is not my niece and nephew at dinner on their iPads, like unable to focus, unable to sit through a meal because they don't have whatever the game is that they play. You know, in my place in Mexico, if I go out with my friends, their children draw and use crowns and like show people the art that they're working on, and I'll take it home with me back to America. And like, it doesn't make any sense for me to take it to anybody in my family, be like, hey, this is what it is. But I do it anyways, because I'm like, hey, we have created this system of numbing, of reducing our young people's aspirations, because we believe that the world is doomed, and that's just what it is. But through art and through things, and not through things like Tallow fried potato chips, but maybe the stories around it and the brand and the creation and inspiring people to do something novel can lead to a better place, a better world, a better connection with our community.
That's so well said. Yeah, I really do feel like there is such a strong connection between the way that we feel about nutrition and the arts in general, which I guess makes sense because food is an art form. Yeah. But I think we, as humans, we just assume, because technology is progressing, we have to constantly be iterating on what we think is healthy, therefore it's not healthy. And I think the same thing is true with the arts and businesses running paid advertising versus long-form content and true, authentic connection to customers, where I think what Harry and I have been realizing the last 2 years is, what if we actually had things figured out like 50 to 70 years ago? Maybe we should have never changed the things that were working when it comes to nutrition, eating single ingredient foods, us sharing a table together, putting our phones in another room and just connecting and asking you how you are. And I think business is the same way. I've been rereading Shoe Dog by Phil Knight because it's one of my favorite books. And I think about when before it was Nike and it was Blue Ribbon, him and his team were going from track meet to track meet, connecting with the athletes, shaking their hands, being connected to them. And they've built obviously a multi-billion-dollar business. And I think you were kind of that example of what you're doing at Dosed. It's a return to tradition from a nutrition perspective, but also with the arts and the content that you're putting out, where I don't imagine your brand peppering Instagram with paid ads. I see you just continuing to create this amazing long-form content where customers really get to know you. And I would recommend that anyone checks out your YouTube channel to really see like the manifestation of what we're talking about here, because those videos are incredible.
Yeah, thank you very much. And obviously you're in in a couple of them, so people will get to see both of you, which is great.
Our acting prowess.
Yeah.
Trying to act.
Yeah. I think that if you are a business leader who wants to make something, product, digital product or physical product or software that reaches an audience, then you have a responsibility to create something advantageous to the world. And I think it's certainly not the the shared belief system of everybody, but perhaps certainly not of entrepreneurs trying to create things. We're ways away from my hypothesis, being able to test my hypothesis whatsoever. When we approach brands to say, hey, don't spend $2 million or spend $2 million on your campaign, but carve out 10% of that to create 6 episodes on YouTube so that your content can live in perpetuity. You can own the channel. Somebody could find it in 10 years and watch it like watching the entire series of Mad Men, or creating something unique to you in that way, which doesn't beguile a customer to become your customer, but just inspires them to become a part of your lifestyle. I think we're certainly a ways away from that, but we're early. You guys tested it. You're still going to do it. You have interesting stories. I don't care and don't buy things because I see it in an Instagram ad. Never. So why would I create a business that needs to rely on something like that to connect with an audience? And I'm not like, I'm beholden to my own desires for how big the business can be. And eventually I might come to a point where I have to choose between the lesser of two evils. And who knows what media will be like in that point where somebody's like, we're going to take this from you, acquire it from you because you haven't touched these channels that we can absolutely just rape. And I'll be forced to like make a decision on how genuine I am to this conversation today, like how genuine I am to the things that I share with the world, in that I believe that storytelling is the highest form of expression and also the best way to connect with your community larger. So I love that I love it. I love that we chat in this way because your conversations with people on this podcast are incredibly unique to the meat mafia, like the people that you bring on and their stories, them being farmers, and like, even Ali Schaefer here on the other day, like her unique story to becoming almost a incredible lobbyist for the movement of psilocybin as a form of healing for the world. So it would be extremely good and for the greater good for you guys to continue to build an audience that grows in size, because what you share is so advantageous across the board for the world. Food. Somebody on here who is crazy enough to say, storytelling is the future, and somebody crazy enough who's to say you should be putting your knees and your hands in dirt every day. Like Austin is a small city with big city problems, and like big city things don't solve a small city's problems the small city's big city problems. But there are thousands, millions of acres around for us to like connect with the earth again and figure out how to bring that into a city,
Are you hopeful that other founders can kind of tap into this appreciation for storytelling? And honestly, the way you're describing it, it's like really an appreciation for the beautiful elements of life that are just unique to each our own.
Yeah.
Like, are you hopeful that people can get away from this model of just like it's a very industrialized model of doing business right now. So like, is there enough, actual material there for people to start to care in that way?
I'm just hopeful, I think the world definitely still exists because of optimists and because of optimism. Otherwise it would just be a dark place. So, I'm hopeful in that the same way I'm, floating down the river in the Amazon, getting ready to arrive to a very secluded tribe to like take place in a 10-day ceremony. I'm hopeful in that opportunity is going to be just as advantageous as this story that I'm telling to answer your question. Like, yes, I'm hopeful because how do we connect with people when we're first meeting them? We tell them stories about ourselves, right? Like, how did the three of us become friends? Well, this is where I'm from. I grew up playing baseball. We went to the Babson College and played baseball together and became best homies. And now we have this podcast. Wow, a story. Like, I would buy Noble because of that story rather than 3 scoops and in your protein. Boom, I feel better, boom. Like cut. So it just takes a few, just as it takes a few bad apples to like ruin a whole bunch. Like, it takes a few good apples, a few trailblazers, a few creators to be like, we're done being the generation that consumes things because we're beguiled by the people that sell them.
I love that. I feel like Harry and I both view you almost as like the anti-conformist. You're genuinely one of the most unique humans that we've ever met. And I feel like what's amazing about you is I feel that you have just such strong conviction behind your beliefs and the way that you live your life. And I think that comes from you really knowing who you are very well. And I'm just curious for the listener, because I think there could be some nuggets in there. Do you find, is that something that you think you were blessed with? Is that something that you've cultivated over time? Because I think that there are a lot of younger people that are just constantly looking left and right in what other people are doing, and they're ultimately living a life that they don't feel like is in alignment with who they are. So as someone that I feel knows themselves incredibly well, I would just love to dig into that a little bit.
I think I'm just constantly reinventing myself to become the person that I want to be. And I fail so frequently that it has become, I've become a person who never fails to fail. And that is unique in that people who want to figure out who they are fail, and so they thus default to who society wants them to be. It's not innate. I think it's innate within all of us to be ourselves. Unfortunately, it's no longer innate because of the world that we grew up in. I think if you're sheltered from the systems that the society has been in place, and that you're always able to wake up every day and make decisions based off of what you want to accomplish, then sure, like you'll uniquely be yourself. But there's a pressure to be something else, and I think you have to give less of that words to honor what it is that you want to become. And I'm not a man to be followed. I am certainly a man to lead. But we all have to decide that the beat of our own drum is a lot stronger than the beat of somebody else's. And that makes for living a life worth living and like fulfilling. Guys, I just have tried so many different things. I think that is certainly innate, like because of who I am, because of how I was raised. I have just been like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to get my ass kicked, and I'm going to keep trying, I'm going to try this other thing that I like, that I have interest in, which is also like, it's a double-edged sword, right? I think that's the right analogy, because like, I'm not the expert at one thing. I'm like, I know a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's helpful. I mean, I think a lot of that, we had a conversation with the guys from Mana, the Shilajit company.
Nice.
We were just talking about conviction, and like conviction comes from the heart. And if you're doing something with your heart driving it, like at least you know that your conviction was high, and that whatever you do, if you fail, it wasn't because you had a little bit of doubt sprinkled in there that, led you astray and led you to kind of not put all of your effort into it. Whereas like a lot of people, I think, just like don't act because they don't know where to source their conviction from.
Shout out Shilajit. Is that not something?
It's a miracle.
Tell our parents that we consume a black tar from the Himalayan mountains.
From the Himalayas.
Live resin, is that what they called it?
Dude, I don't even really know what it is, but the minerals in there are wild.
Yeah.
They would be a great brand to connect you with that wants to tell stories. That's a good idea.
They're where are they based?
Australia.
Yeah, the Ned's Buds.
Yeah.
Ned's Buds. That's the next brand.
Ned's Buds.
Yeah.
What would it be?
I don't care for cannabis, but that's a good that's a good I mean for medicinal purposes for people that need it, then certainly something.
Or like headphones.
Headphones would be good. Yeah.
Or a combination of the two.
Yeah.
You order headphones and you get like a little.
Yeah. So as with you guys just hitting the 100K mark on the nose-to-tail powder, protein powder, what do you distill? What 2 or 3 things do you distill the growth to over the last, from January 1?
I think that the fact that we were naive in the beginning to start was incredibly beneficial.
Yeah.
Like the willingness that you have of, hey, we don't have CPG experience, but we're just going to roll up our sleeves and figure it out. And we know that we're resourceful and have enough people that can help support us. I think that was a huge thing too. I think when Harry and I were both younger, we almost let perfection get in the way of just starting something. even with the podcast, there was nothing that we know now that we didn't really know at 2019 in the context of nutrition. There's just so much pressure, at least I was putting on myself, to not create something.
Yeah.
And I think having that core foundation through the Meat Mafia that led to Noble gave us a lot of confidence, where it was media first, product second. And I think, to your point, that's the way that a lot of these businesses are going to continue to progress, is like create amazing, authentic content. And then actually, if you listen closely to your audience, they're going to tell you the product that they want, because we were just getting so many questions about protein powders and supplements. And Harry and I just said we should just be building something in line with our nutritional philosophy. And then I think the third thing would be, for me, is just how much you can compound by bringing on the right team members as well too. We hired a fractional chief marketing officer and a fractional CFO that are competent in all the things that Harry and I are not competent in the aspect of CPG, and they've just helped scale everything so much. And it's just excited. We're excited to just think about where we could be 6 months from now, 12 months from now, because I remember being on Twitter in the early days, consuming, not creating, and seeing these people that I looked up to that would post little screenshots of their Shopify revenue and being like, oh my gosh, how incredible would that be if we had a product of our own? And now we're at that stage 2 years later. And I don't know, I think a lot of us just downplay how much you can achieve within a year just by having kind of the right gust of energy and momentum in the right direction.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think simplicity too wins in the end.
Definitely.
Just keeping things simple. It's the only thing I could possibly add. It's like, I think what we did well was what Brett was saying, is just like going and just being super naive, but then also just kind of falling back to not overcomplicating it, just trying to set up a system that works and run with it. So yeah, keeping it simple.
And this is up from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's profitable.
Yeah.
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 Big time, because you aren't spending $100,000 a month.
No. I think
you guys
also
aren't wasteful. You can't be wasteful.
you can't be wasteful, not at this stage. It's like, even though we raise, we just always have that mindset of like, are we operating decisions as if we had $0 in the bank account? Because this whole world of venture capital backed companies is wild. Like, just the decisions that you're making because you have these funds, and it's almost not even real business. You're almost operating from delusion, right? Or from something that's not real.
Yeah, it isn't sustainable either. And who wants to operate that way? Like, we grew up inspired by businesses that were profitable, not by businesses that grew fast and just kept cash calling, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be really interesting seeing, because the last 10 years of entrepreneurs have benefited from zero interest rate environment, basically meaning that like money's free. All these investors are looking to invest as much as they possibly can.
Yeah.
So it's like anyone, and this isn't a knock on anyone who's had success over the last 10 years, but I think it's about to get a lot harder.
Right.
And you are going to have to really understand like your customers in a more intimate way. It's not just going to be add dollars here, add dollars there. It's going to be who is actually buying every single piece of product. And it's probably going to be a slower game too.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of like being inspired by things in the 90s, we're all wearing
Sofa.
Oh yeah.
Seed Oil Free America, which is a direct ripoff of Dare. Thank you, Dare. Please don't come for us. Where we are creating vintage inspired PSAs, replacing drugs with seed oils. Again, the blend of familiar and new. And then, hopefully making things with brands like you guys who are not like directly a replacement for seed oils, but of the same opinion that these things should not be circulated and sold to the consumer. The back of the shirt is very cool too. Maybe we'll do it as the thumbnail.
Yeah.
We'll do something like that. Yeah. And this will be a mechanism to create something like editorial for Dose and for you guys, like maybe the Goop of the carnivore space, if you will, telling stories, selling products, and like connecting with a wider audience, maybe somebody who's not ready to give up on their canola oil, but is still very curious, they're bi-curious, seed oil and tallow.
Tallow curious.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, it's not just merch with an amazing message. The way that I take it is like, you want the merch to be really aesthetic, that people just want to wear even regardless of the message too. It's almost like how Dose is solving for taste. It's like the merch is the same thing. It's just very aesthetic.
Yeah, that comes from a place of like wanting to create beautiful things, right? Like, I just want to create beautiful things with you guys, with the brands that are on the client side, with our own brands. I just think the world benefits from beauty, And this is something like I don't know the last time I wore a graphic tee until we made this. And, that was like in the design phase. It's like, what is going to lead to me wearing this actually? Because I want to wear something that I'm going to make. And I created such a small run of it just to, figure out if people really dug it. And thus far, people really dig it. So maybe we'll make some more.
Do you see a good uptick of people, like if you wear this shirt out in the wild, people that are asking you what the acronym means?
Yes, definitely. And, I was with some great successful dudes who are friends of mine who inspire me on Sunday, who are not in this space, but are in the spaces of the future. And I bring the hats, and everybody leaves with one of the hats and wears it out. And like it's because it's a familiar and new thing, really. Like they grew up on Dare, we grew up on Dare, so they see that association with Dare. They put it on, and they're like, Dare taught us about drugs that we had no idea existed. And instead of curbing our appetite for drugs, they were like, what are these drugs? And so hopefully SOFA doesn't do that, where it doesn't teach us about seed oils that we don't know about it, because I do think that there's a really quick, easy association. It's like, that thing that made you feel like crap, it's because of seed oils. So let's take that out and replace it with tallow or with butter or with ghee. And that can be the motivation, the story of this shirt. I always think about, sorry to interrupt. I always think about when we're creating things, like afterwards, when the curtain, comes down and we're up there on stage, like what do we want people to ask us about why we made that? And for this shirt and for this movement, I think I'm confident I want people to ask me to just be like, WTF, mate? Like this is a crazy idea, and Dare is gonna come for you, and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, well, we'll have fun until that happens,
Yeah.
It'll good publicity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost, you got like the three prongs: the content, an education piece, the physical product space, and then merchandise too.
Yeah.
So it's those are great three stools right there, man. But dude, we're super grateful not only to be friends with you, but some of our favorite episodes are sitting down with founders like you that really have the conviction and the balls to do something that people have want this thing to exist or wish that it existed, but maybe they don't have the charisma to do it themselves, like just the willingness to kind of put a lot of things on the line to will a product into existence. And I think the world just needs more people like you with that mindset, and just very appreciative to be friends with you and finally have you on the podcast as well.
Yeah. And you guys check out them at the beginning of, I think I bought a food truck on my YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
To see our acting debut.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was great. And
I
that was
get an IMDb page for that.
No, well, it wasn't SAG, so you won't have that. But I think that was late November after Thanksgiving of 2023, and I think I was telling you guys that the chips would launch December 13th at that time. So today is May 29th, 2024. So don't give up. Just keep on, everybody.
Keep keeping on.
Just keep going. Just keep going. Because eventually you will launch tallow fried potato chips in 2 weeks.
Dude, launch day is going to be epic.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can't wait to support in our small way.
Thank you for having me on, gentlemen.
Dude, appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
brother.
Ned's Buds.